create, stress within the nation. Now, if I had those skills, I would look at food crisis. Can I innovate? Can I work in that food crisis area? Yeah, a lot of people look at the generation of food as a labor-intensive, something that laborers do, quote. It isn't something that I can innovate and go ahead and do. Yet you find in urban areas, some of the young people develop these vertical gardens. Yeah, you go to Madari, you go to a place like that, where they take a bit of polythene and they wrap it around, they put soil and they begin to grow something on literally 5 square meters. And that vertical garden can actually sustain a family. And it also can create business for them because they can begin to sell vegetables to their neighbors with very little capital, very little input. Now, if this human capital that we're developing in the country was able to innovate within the crisis that we're finding ourselves in, we would actually have a very, very different kind of economy. In the northern part of the country, where we've got all, that's where the drought is hitting hardest. And I keep harping on about this. There's a lot of water underground. And all it needs is for an organization like a county government to say, we will just drill 5 boreholes and then unleash the power of youth onto that. Now, if you unleash the power of youth onto that with a small amount of capital, what could they do?
Thank you.
They could do a lot. So I think we just need to be able to sow those little seeds that allow the human capital that we have developed in this country to realize the potential that they can within Kenya.
Right, thank you. Right, let's hear from Professor. We will end up on the rad of the day. We look at the dailies.
It's interesting. I think there are 2 things coming here and about Twitter. We were discussing actually this Saturday with my students, Twitter, and we plugged in KQ. Because also it's in the same kind of stuff, even when you look locally. And almost a tripartite there you cannot ignore. You have the customer, you have the employees, and you have the shareholder. If you look into what is happening in Twitter, he has really looked at this one of the employees. And the guys of Facebook also came yesterday, 4,000 laying off.
11,000.
11,000. I think that's a very, because as Patrick rightly put it earlier on, one of the biggest opportunities for any company is to really invest in those individuals. And what we concluded is watch this space in terms of Twitter and in terms of Facebook. You can see even their shares are going down now. Laying off people perhaps is the last thing you should be. I'm a strong believer that create more opportunities to enhance, to really keep people in space. And that brings the second point you are raising in terms of recession. How do opportunity we can? And Jack Ma, by the way, what happened to Jack Ma? We don't hear about him anymore.
Jack Ma is relaxing in China. And he's not as vocal as he used to be.
What would have happened? He's no longer vocal as he was, actually.
Xi Jinping is a new Mao.
So, Jack Ma, if you recall, gentlemen, he was in Nairobi.
Yes.
And he went to the University of Nairobi and University of Toronto. And he said something that I still remember today. He said, opportunities occur in terms of challenges. It's really good. And he made a rider. If you wait for policy, a numbering policy for that, somebody else will have taken that opportunity. And look at what perhaps they're looking at the issue of coffee. Coffee almost went down. If you look Rwanda, they used that opportunity, then carried people. It's now being exported as a finished product. They're using Alibaba. Yeah? Look, Nana. Yeah? And by the way, my prediction last week was great. That was Nani won. Netanyahu.
Yeah, Netanyahu won.
Netanyahu won.
Yes.
Your brother is going to get a lot of competition from Florida. Oh yeah. Trump has to fight with that guy in Florida, the governor now. He had a very, very good turnout this week. So if you look at Nana, has also went and said cocoa beans. The whole thing is the price of the world. So I think in terms of coffee, and I see coffee in this country as an opportunity. It's in challenge because people are now bringing in terms of accommodation, apartments, boy committee. They are now Tattoo City. But that's an opportunity to see where you can leverage that. And I think the bottom line is to see that, and what can I really cut in terms of that. Right now, as we look at agriculture, and I need educated here, Bill, good to see you, and good article you had. GMO. Does GMO really address what we have in this country? Because what we are suffering from this country is perhaps more productivity. And if you can actually leverage, how do I produce more? Is fertilizer the best way? And we all know manure perhaps gives you a better yield. Those are the areas we get it. There are people, and our son is working on one of the things, the Remuru, where they're leveraging on collecting all this garbage in town. And it's becoming what you'd call manure. So those are the opportunities in terms of we can get in terms of what we are going through, particularly when we have issues of really feeding our people. Yeah.
Right, so let me welcome Bill Okero. Good morning, good to see you. Right, we not even began looking at the dailies. Yes, at least we've been praying for. Very important. We're still on our first session with the Rad of the Day. We're talking about people, resources, in light of what has been going on, especially the human resource. Twitter is laying off, Facebook is laying off. We've seen, of course, a very protracted also, row between, so to speak, between, the management of KQ and the pilots as well. And the court ordered that there should be resumption of flights with the pilots going back to work. And we're talking about looking forward, especially with the recession. And every person has been endowed somehow by God that you have a gift in you that, it's sort of a survival tactic for you. Wherever you'll be thrown, you are able to survive because you have some capability, one or two, that you need to enhance moving forward. I don't know what would you pick, especially in light of what is going on currently and how they can reconfigure for the future.
I remember the former President Kibaki had come up with this program of skills development, technical skills. And they were to revamp all the technical institutions, particularly the polytechnics, so that they could have at least 1 million Kenyans who have the skills, particularly IT-related or technical skills that can, because the future is in skills development, really. If you're skilled, you can do your own things. And I don't know what happened to that program, but I think the future, from the way things are going, unless we develop skills for people so that they can do things on their own, because if you know how to do things, you can do your own things, really, at the end of the day. You go out in the rural areas, to get someone to fix your radio or your phone in Mandera, you have to get someone from Nairobi. They come from Nairobi. The guy who does the little bit of plumbing work in my village in Mandera, they come from here, Nairobi. So you go to Kiambu, you may not find a guy who can do some simple electrical or technical. So I think those things are really critical. Why do you have to transport some small coffee tables all the way from Nairobi to Kakamega to be sold there? You can get, if you have skills, you can develop all those things. And today, tools are available, very modern tools that make the work even easier for them. So I think skills are the things that, and this is why all these multinational organizations like Google and like Microsoft and all these Jack Ma's institutions, they are not focused on academic papers. They really look at the skills. What can you do? That's the question you'll be asked in the interview. Yes, you explain what you can do, and they'll tell, okay, fit in somewhere. But it's something that we need to look at. I think that there's no other way of maintaining jobs going in the future. It's going to be a bit difficult, with technology limiting the space in one way or the other in the workplaces. You've seen what has happened in the financial institutions in Kenya during the COVID. Most of the employees were operating in shifts at home. Very few are going to work. The rest would operate from home. And I think then eventually you find that it's cheaper for them to get people to, the few people they want to operate from home and do a lot more, than to hire so many people sitting in offices. And that has an impact on so many things. It's not just about employees.
Yes.
The rental spaces, the logistics that would normally be employed, the transport, it affects everything. So I think for a country like ours, I think that we have invested a lot in human resource development in education for many, many years. But if you look at the human capital waste in this country, when you see how many people finish secondary school, how many people finish secondary schools,
yes,
and then they don't transit on to university, or they finish university and they don't transit on to jobs or other tertiary institutions. I mean, the huge waste. And I think this is something that we need to focus on as a nation going in the future from what's coming up.
Indeed. Right, thank you. Thank you. We shall be discussing a raft of issues on that as well. Survival mode, especially for the companies like Posta. People are talking about the future of Posta. I think also the new ICT CS also has made a comment regarding the revitalizing of Posta moving forward, and other corporations as well, in light of where we are living in this epoch of time and the technology. Let's see what we have fresh off the press this morning in the dailies, and we shall pick also the brains of our panelists as well with these particular stories that we have headlined on the most dailies today. We begin with the bold paper. That is the Standard. Big names in race for EALA slots is what is the splash here when you pick a copy of the Standard today. Headache after failing to get key positions in government. President William Ruto's allies and Raila Odinga's cronies are sticking out for slots in the regional parliament, but with only 9 seats to share, who will have the last laugh? That is the abiding question. You can see some of their faces here on the front page of the Standard this morning. We have Kennedy Kalonzo, the son of Kalonzo Musyoka. We have also Winnie Odinga, the daughter of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. We have Suleiman Shabal, Timothy Busire, Hassan Omar, Kanini Kega, Jeremiah Kioni, Fatuma Gedi, David Sankok, and Justus Kizito. These are just some of the faces that have been, of course, fronted so far. Also, 90-day visa deal for Kenyans. We do have, of course, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is in the country on a 2-day visit, and we can see him here. This is yesterday, President William Ruto and his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, at State House, Nairobi, Kenya. Nairobi, Kenyans will now enjoy a 3-month visa-free visit to the South African country in a deal struck yesterday. We shall look at some of these deals that were struck yesterday. He was here primarily for a bilateral, of course, talk with the president of course, Kenya. This is William Ruto. And we've seen, we expect also a call from South Africa. How is our balance of trade as far as our relations are concerned? These are the biggest economies in Africa. Then at the tip of South Africa, and we have also the south of the continent, and here the Horn of Africa. So we shall look at those deliberations. House approves Kenyan forces to enter DR Congo. House approved Kenyan forces to enter DR Congo. But what will it cost our country to sustain our forces there in Congo? Right, we shall look at that as well. And that, you can follow it on page 12 of the Standard. Controller of U.S. Congress in balance. We're doggedly following what is happening with the midterm elections in the U.S. as well, and strict rules for Qatar World Cup. You find out all the details there, tucked away on page 48 of the Standard this morning. Freedom knocks for Gachagua as DPP withdraws case. And this is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Let me just go back there and show you. Freedom has come, right? And you can see that is the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua with that fedora cap there. They normally say this is a Moranga, Texas cap. Moranga, Texas. 7.4 billion shillings, the amount of money cited by the prosecution in the case, and which Mr. Gachagua has argued several times that it is fictitious claim. freedom has come finally. Accused of fraud, arrested in 7.4 billion shillings investigation, in his words, intimidated and harassed by the Uhuru government and hauled to court several times to explain the source of his billions. Rigathi Gachagua is living the freedom promise of Kenya Kwanza era as the Director of Public Prosecutions formally writes to the courts asking to withdraw the charges against the Deputy President. 3 months into office, this son of a Mau Mau peasant could be completely off the hook by this afternoon, should the courts grant him and Nuruddin Haji their prayers. You have that story on page 4 and 5, so we eagerly wait to see what will the court say. And looking at the side by there, Plum State's position for former polls managers, from James Muhati to Ezra Chiloba to Immaculate Kasait and Andiritu and many others, they climbed to position of power and influence for this now celebrated career civil servants started at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. A nation analysis of a state appointment in the past few years shows. You can follow that inside the Daily Nation today. Picked for top jobs, we have Ezra Chiloba, Communications Authority Director General, James Mohati, PS Nominee, Economic Planning, Immaculate Kasait, Data Commissioner, Consulate Nkatha, Deputy Head of Mission in Rome, Italy, Dr. Paul Kurgat, Deputy Head of Mission in Moscow, Russia, Margaret Mwachanya, Deputy Head of Mission in Islamabad, Pakistan, Andiritu, Registrar of Political Parties, and Praxids Torore, Board Member, IPOA. It seems it's a good transitional office to actually work in, IBC, right? Because we see also, I think the wife of Chebukati also was poised to be, appointed in some of this. We saw some of the list that she's been listed there, and many others from IBC. So is it a sort of a payback after the elections? Gituro, I can see you're greatly shy to answer. Let me move on.
Yeah, move on.
I move on to Bilokero. Yes.
No, it is.
It is.
There are certain positions in government where the executive feels obliged because of their working relationships. IEBC is one of them. It goes without saying that if you are the IEBC commission that supervised the elections that brought in the current executive to power, and your term ends, you'll be rewarded for seeing through, given that our elections always are contested. There's that perception or understanding that the IBC will have assisted those people who came to power. So it goes without saying that you expect to be rewarded as your term comes to an end, and that we will see. The other positions, also that often assist the executive in one way or the other. The police, for example, if you have been Inspector General or a police commissioner, or they've always ended, transited. All the top security guys, intelligence, police, these are all critical institutions that one way or the other the executive feel indebted to them because of their role or because of their support in one way or the other. So those are institutions where you can be certain you won't disappear into the horizon when you leave the office.
Yeah.
Is viewed by any imagination suggesting we remove the word independent? Because surely, I think it's interesting because Bill has explained and say you brought in. So, are you saying that the elections are not fair?
No. I have a different...
Yes. Let's hear from Bunyasi.
People who are in senior positions in this country and any other, even in the developed world, like in the armed forces, police, security, and so on, they always transition to some role or other. The reason being, they have exposure to things that are essential in running the organs of state. So you can't quite throw them out and say, I'll go to the population and pick up another one the following day. Then you begin looking at paper qualifications and so on. And there, of course, might be instances in which particular individuals in particular institutions for elections are performed in ways that people do not consider to have been fair. that might be. But really just that level of exposure puts you under an exposure level that is useful for many of the state organs. So I really think the transitioning of directly with the officers concerned, I'm not talking about their families, that's a different ballgame, is not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
No.
But it seems then when people, the gesture will read like, why are being favored, so to speak? Why are they given preferential treatment? Is there something that we're not reading that really happened during that particular?
I think what I'm probably being a bit off the edge here, but those what I call high pressure jobs, as they are, if you look away from the politics that you see in front, and you look at the people behind and how they perform and what they do, it's actually a very good bellwether for their capacity to perform. If you survive in those kind of places and you're able to do things that, you have the thick skin when necessary to completely ignore all these criticisms that come, and you're still able to deliver something through that particular process, perhaps there's something we don't see that these people see. Right? And I just take it from a different angle completely.
So can
these high pressure jobs
Yeah.
that you have, and these commissions that you have around the country are all, sometimes they come into the limelight, and IBC is one that comes in every 5 years. Right? Naturally, it goes in there. Look at the judiciary.
All right.
So the judiciary is in that, and if you're well-performing people in the judiciary, you normally find them also coming into other areas, into other organizations, either when they're there or when they leave. So,
Marawi get any job? If Marawi get any job? If you are independent, you are not likely.
Absolutely. No, I wanted to follow through.
Around getting a job in government. I'm talking about getting a job elsewhere. In general.
Elsewhere, yes. Internationally, is a different matter.
So somebody like Maraga has probably got some, he's got some international things, but seeing him perform under that pressure, right, is when somebody looks at you from that point of view, there are certain things that they see beyond the pressure that we see from, as people are watching.
I wanted to ask you then, will the perception be the same also for the OPEC 4 commissioners? Because you say that is a high-powered, pressurized, so to speak, or pressured job.
The OPEC commissioners
we're talking about the 4 OPEC as they want to be called right now. Yes. Will the same assessment be fair for them as well?
To have your people, because you're in charge and you want to run your government, but I'm hesitant about the one for elections, IBC. I think that's an institution which has to go beyond governments which come in, and I think, Patrick, that's why we only see them after 5 years. I think that's why we fail. We should fill them all these 5 years. So when you come to that of 9th of August or whatever, it's an easy job for them to go through. But I think if you stay here and you just failed 5 years, it doesn't make sense. But that's an institution, in my view, which is telling them, Mwananchi, you go vote. Because and we know some of this 2017, they were very crucial on the other side. Yeah, and you don't want to mention him. So I would look at this as an opportunity not to do the job I'm supposed to do, but I know there will be rewards down the road. I think that's not right.
Gentlemen, that is fair. You are a professor in the university. You add more value than what those 4 OPEC commissioners, the value they bring to this country. But if you retire,
I wish you had the president.
wait, if you retire tomorrow, are you going to become a super commissioner? It's highly unlikely they will even mention your name. And there's so many professors and so many other institutions where people have done a lot more for this country, right? Where will you find in this country someone who is sacked like Chiroba, who was sacked in 2008 under circumstances which are very clear? You've seen all those audit reports, all those general's reports and everything. And he was sacked. And 3 years later, you're given the most important job in the country. I mean, this thing is not about what we're saying about, the high pressure. No, it's how you have interacted with the executive and assisted them one way or the other in your position. That's it.
How you did the
payback.
How you did the bootlicking. And the worst thing, Bill,
I disagree.
But the one thing
truly,
you
no, if actually these things have moved to court, there has been a determination, and we've seen the row between the chair and the CEO. Then you've shown the door. A few months down the line, you have also you have been appointed, for a top executive job. Are not eyebrows bound to be raised regarding that? If we are truly going through the rigmarole of character, integrity, competence at the end of the day.
But we did it the other day in Parliament, and there we are. But the sad thing in this whole damn thing, what message are we sending to our children? Mm-hmm. That's the downside. And we are killing, or we have killed a generation. It doesn't bother. I'm not going to bother. It's the connections I have. And that's sad, because the moment you enter that responsibility you have, it should be your own effort. Now, look at this list, as you pointed out very clearly. Why is that paper? Okay?
Oh, the list, we go back
these are all kids, or whatever you'd say, of people who are already in position. So why is Diba kid going to get an opportunity? And I think it's important as a nation we need to reflect back. What message are we sending to our children? Not even mine, but even that CS who was said, you can go ahead. What a message are you sending to your children? And therefore, how do we see this country the next 20, 30 years?
Yeah, we're in that space. So this particular EALA slots, because I think also what we're discussing segues to what is on the front page of the Standard as well. Some of the faces here will ask, you've not made it in the ballots, but now this will be, your place now to take relief, launching a consolation or sort of space for you as well at the end of the day. So where the spirit of, just agreeing that I lost it, but you cannot also be given a launching or sort of a soft landing position at EALA. It seems EALA is, and how pivotal is EALA anyway for us as a country? We've seen some of the characters also previously in EALA. If you speak to some of the legislators who are in EALA, they don't really they've not even been showing up in those parliaments at the end of the day. So even if we steamroll some of these faces because we are related to them one way or the other, what value will they bring? And these are some of the pivotal questions we need to ask. Are there also other Kenyans who are not competent enough to actually be in these positions? Or because I am a chairperson or a party leader, then also one way or the other, I have to bring in my son, my daughter. And these are key questions. I know it's the political space, but this is a reality. Because this is just a big, speaking to the broader picture of what really happens also within corporates as well. Or even some of these civil servants' jobs. Even if we go through the Public Service Commission still, they say this is just a PR exercise.
I would say, I hear you, Debal, but there is a risk of reverse discrimination in these things. If you are born in a family of people already in positions, where, you kind of, you have to, even though in the private sector, finance, maybe you have to go to the church, become a pastor, or do something completely different from what they are doing.
Because people will only see like this.
Yes, there is a risk there.
Yes.
But that is, I think, being generous. On the other hand, there is also a very well-known tendency for people to bring in people who are close to them, sometimes family, and I think bringing in family in any form, shape, our laws are not friendly to that kind of thing. That's nepotism, and that's frowned upon. But I have heard a very strange argument where, in Parliament, for example, people say, but they're also Kenyans. Then you wonder why we are worried about thinking through the issues of openness, transparency, and avoidance of nepotism. So I think, let me say, it's a mixed bag of things that goes in there. And every season, the same thing comes out. And my last point is, how strategic is EALA? And I think EALA should be very strategic, because the goal of political unification, or even harmonization of development programs as a region and so on, depends also on the quality of the leadership in EALA. Fortunately, of course, the executives executive heads, the countries make the decisions, but these people are passing laws and other legislation that maybe that are crucial. For example, movement of people and goods and so on, labor movement. The things that are quite important. So maybe we should now be thinking more of people who can add specific value to EALA, people who have been in committees related to it, who have published, who have done work in their lives that are important. Otherwise, you sort of stunt the development of the institution. That's the problem.
Bilo.
In East African community, the objectives are many, but the most important initially was about political federation in the region. But I think the most important thing over the years has been the economic integration. Already a lot has happened in terms of the limiting the tariffs between the using having uniform tariffs and the customs and all that. But I think for me, in my view, the most important thing about East African community is the trade between this region in this region. I think that is the main thing really. And so I would have thought that among the people to be considered, in particular, people in the business community.
In the business community.
Because those are the people who have challenges. We have serious challenges in every industry, in our relationships in the region, really, in movement of goods, in problems in tariffs, problems. There are so many you've seen in the news every other day. Vehicles parked along the border for kilometers in Uganda, 10, 15, 20 kilometers, Tanzania. Challenges really, and this is affecting businesses, is affecting the economy, but you hardly find it as an important matter for the people in government. They don't see this as and you have to be in business to understand really what it costs to see trucks, queuing there for 3 weeks just to get goods into Uganda, and it's come from somebody's business, somebody's factory. It's costed him money. He has to be competitive in the region. But so I think these institutions are very important, really, for the economy, and so I would have thought they would look at all those, particularly get people. We have Patrick to sit in on this EALA because it's not a full-time job, but he'll add more value, much more value in terms of regional economic integration than some other person who probably has no idea about what's going on in that. So I think we are really not putting the economy at the centerpiece for South African Parliament, which is the main thing.
Very important. If you look at the ambassador we have in China, it's interesting. If you actually need China to do business with China, you have to get somebody who understands business of what we are doing. Because most of our imports are from there. And I'm not challenging the wisdom who the person is there, but you look at the credential, you look at your past record, you look at that. And I think I would approach it from that perspective. How can we benefit from the region in terms of business? Forget having a political, we will never get a political, what do you call it? Within the East African region that we have one president. No, that's not, perhaps you'll never know. But economically, it's probably an easier route to go. And therefore, you need very strong people in Arusha. Yeah.
Train all our embassies, actual ambassadors. And it's brought a good example. I was exporting flowers, and I went for an exhibition to Moscow. And, the embassy, I don't want to say when it was, but the embassy was completely oblivious of what is going on. And this is an international exhibition, and Russia is one of the major players in the flower industry, really. And I was shocked to find that all the customers I met told us we cannot import directly from Kenya. It has to come through Holland. Your flower has to go to Holland and then get it's simple. Somebody has simply in this government not engaged that government to make it possible for us to export directly to that country. And so I think having people in these institutions, embassies and East African, community institutions, whose main concern is because today it's about the economy really. But look at this American. The issues really about bilateral or multilateral relations is about the economy. Nobody's bothered about other issues. So people must be, look at the lady who was posted here as an ambassador from Washington.
Yes. A consummate business lady.
Yes.
A billionaire.
I mean, he's not a politician.
Yes.
Looking at this, I have been intimately involved in issues of trade around East Africa from another organization where I'm involved. And the biggest obstacle to trade in East Africa is this organization, right? There's a lot of people there who are put there who are not progressive and probably do not even understand the tenets of business, right? And when you try and sort of put ideas that would actually improve trade within East Africa, there is no will at the East African Legislative Assembly to actually unlock that opportunity that you see. We made tremendous steps in terms of doing business with each other in East Africa. And as you can see it, who are the biggest trade, relations that we have? Uganda, Tanzania. It used to be UK, it used to be US, it used to be those people. It has shifted. So there is traction. But there's a lot more that can happen, not just intra-EA trade, but EA becoming a great trader in the world. And that can only be done by unlocking the opportunities that we have, as a community, as an East African community, in terms of being able to trade as a bloc globally. But we need to be adept at trading with each other. And the EALA has to have people who understand not the political angle, but the commercial angle of working. It's almost like, I'm probably treading on very, very thin ice. But as a country, we've been talking about economic diplomacy globally. But economic diplomacy tends to sit at policy level and agreements and so forth. What we need is commercial diplomacy. People who know trade, people who know how we interact with each other. Not people who make policies about trade, but people who actually trade. So we need the likes, as Bill was saying, when he went to Moscow. We need people who understand how to link the businesses in Moscow with the businesses in Kenya and get them talking to each other. That's commercial. It's not economic, right? And I think we need to move on from economic diplomacy to commercial diplomacy and get a lot more working between the East African nations. And one of the things that this shows, this selection, is that when everything is linked to political parties to put people in there, the selection mechanism is completely against getting the best people into that place, right? It becomes a political issue rather than the right person in that place. So perhaps we need to look at how do we get the people to go into that place. Is there a different mechanism we can use other than political parties nominating people? Because that's a mechanism that has been set up, right? So once you set up that mechanism, you get exactly this. You can't get anything else because that is what political parties will do. So I think we need to change the means by which you select people who are going to represent the country in such important bodies that can create opportunities for Kenya. Because the East African Legislative Assembly, not just for Kenya, but for the whole of East Africa, I think is a very, very key driver in terms of how us as a regional economic community shines. And we are probably the best regional economic community in Africa at the moment, right? And the oldest, right? And we are performing very well. But just imagine where we could have been. Look at the EU, which came and borrowed from us, and then went and set themselves up, and look at how well they're working.
Indeed.
Right? So we need to learn a little bit more in terms of how other people have done it and get people into the EAE, whatever it is, where me, Patrick Obath, and Bilo can say, yeah, that person is the person that I think I can trust to actually make business work for us in East Africa.
And if indeed we do just for a short break, but maybe a question that we should just ponder on after we come back, is we have all these kings within the EAC right now, and we're speaking on the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. How is the kinks here affecting the entire bigger picture of AFCFTA moving forward? Because I think, yes, since January 2021, when it came now to full implementation, it's not really kicked off. Africa is not really trading amongst ourselves as well as we should. And I think there are these common blocks that also are acting as impediment to the bigger picture. Then how then do we try and clear these impediments? Do we do away with the blocks so that we can have a free open market for entire Africa? Or what do we do moving forward? Right, we take a short break. And of course, remember, the big man is still here in the country from South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa bilateral talks were held yesterday. Some, of course, goodies. We have a free entry visa 3-month for you if you want to go to South Africa. Now that has been knocked down. There won't be any of those impediments so far. And a raft of other issues as well that we'll be looking at on the other